Hello there. I wanted to do a video just for Jehovah's Witnesses who visit my channel, who might be slowly waking up and realising that not everything Watchtower has told them is true, and I wanted to give 10 tips for kind of coping and making it through that awakening process. Tip number 1, the 3 R's. Research, research, research. You really cannot do enough research when you're trying to undo the effects of years and years and years of indoctrination. You really need to educate yourself and inform yourself about precisely how you've been misled, because otherwise, as I'm going to explain later in this video, it could be detrimental to you. So the best places to go to, in my experience, obviously I'm going to plug JW Survey because it's my website and hopefully some of it is helpful, but you really ought to check out jwfacts.com. That was one of my first websites that I went to, and just the general tone of it is very non-threatening, very sincere, and it just basically focuses on the facts. You also really need to read, if you haven't already read it, Crisis of Conscience by former governing body member Ray Franz. It's quite a thick book, as you can see. But if you're waking up from indoctrination, it's basically a must-read, because it was written by, as I say, a former governing body member, and it goes into so much detail about the organisation's history from the perspective of somebody who was able to see the organisation from perspectives that are obviously denied to ordinary witnesses. He was sitting on the governing body when they were making key decisions that would affect millions of people. So I would really strongly recommend you to read this book, and if buying it is problematic for you for whatever reason, in hard copy, you can actually, there's a website called scribd.com where you can read it online in PDF format or download it, and I think you pay a small fee for downloading it. When I did it, it was something like $5, I don't know what it is now. But it's well worth downloading it and reading, because it will give you a perspective on the organisation that you won't find anywhere else. Tip number 2, plan your exit strategy. Leaving behind a religion that you have held dear for years and years and years, and all of the indoctrination that's gone along with that, is not an easy process, especially when there are family members involved, perhaps people who you see on a day-to-day basis, witness friends, and it's very worthwhile sitting down and planning very carefully where you want to go with this, whether your objective is to become inactive, whether your objective is to disassociate yourself. These are decisions only you can make, but it's worthwhile thinking very carefully about what the ramifications will be. Tip number 3, protect your privacy online. I can't stress this enough. The thing about the internet, especially social media, is that if you have witness friends and family, it's very, very easy for them to see what you're doing online, whether you're going on websites that they would view as questionable. Even liking a video or a meme or whatever that portrays the witnesses in a less than flattering light can land you in trouble. And so it's well worth thinking very, very carefully about how much your witness friends and family can see of you online. Especially if you're going to use Facebook, I would strongly recommend, if you're a fader, that is, you're wanting to stay inactive and not disassociate yourself and keep your bonds with your family members, I would strongly recommend setting up a fake account on Facebook. Don't have anything on your Facebook account that could give a clue as to your real identity, because that could land you in hot water. Tip number 4, build a team. When I was inactive for maybe 2 years before I disassociated myself, and I was shunned during that period, even though technically I was still one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I call it preemptive shunning. And it's very, very difficult to go through that kind of ostracism, especially when there's no real reason for it. It's just people who you thought were friends turning their back on you because you're not as zealous and devout as they are anymore. So what you really need to do is establish a team. Maybe you have family members who aren't witnesses. Maybe you have friends at work or neighbours or people in your community that you can just draw that little bit closer to, because when the shunning kicks in, whether you're inactive or disassociated or disfellowshipped, when the shunning kicks in, it will be difficult, and you'll need some kind of team. It's human nature to want to belong to a community, and it's important that you build that team now before things start to get more difficult. Tip number 5, exercise extreme caution when talking with witness friends and family, and especially elders, about your doubts. In fact, I would recommend not to talk about your doubts at all unless it's absolutely necessary. Maybe you've got a close friend who's an elder, and you think, oh well, you know, Bill's such a close family friend and he's so open-minded, and I've heard him say things before anyway, so I'm sure if I have him round for a coffee and let him know what I've found online, I'm sure he'll be understanding. No, it doesn't work that way. I was once Bill the elder. I was once a very open-minded elder, and I can tell you that when you're an elder, you are essentially a line manager. It doesn't matter what your personal thoughts are, you do what the organisation tells you to do. It's far better to avoid any conversation, especially with elders, and even when it comes to friends and family members. Be very careful with what information you let out, because it could land you in a back room having a very serious conversation, perhaps even a judicial committee, because depending on how strict your local congregation is, any kind of doubting of the organisation, well, it's just not allowed. You're not allowed to doubt the organisation. And I've sat in a room with elders, looked them in the eye and been told, we're not allowed to discuss doctrine with you. It just isn't on the table for discussion. Related to this is tip number 6, be realistic about your family. Just because you're waking up doesn't mean your husband or wife will wake up, doesn't mean your children will wake up. It takes a long time, it takes a variety of factors to bring someone to a situation where they're able to start honestly questioning their beliefs. It's not as easy as flicking a switch, and if you expect it to be that easy with your spouse, with your children, you will be bitterly disappointed. It's far better to be patient. Obviously, depending on how close you are, you will want to say something. You'll maybe want to prepare them for the fact that you're winding down, going on the ministry and going to the meetings and that kind of thing. That's perfectly understandable. But just don't expect them to drop everything and follow you or to agree with you. Just share small nuggets of information that you found, especially in the publications, because you can't expect them to trust anything you find on JW Facts or JW Survey. But if you find something in the publications themselves that doesn't make sense, then just mention it, but don't kind of make a big deal of it. When I was waking my wife up, that's precisely what I did. I'd share things now and then, but I wouldn't insist that she saw things my way, and by and large I left her to come to me with questions, and eventually she ended up joining me. But it doesn't work out that way with all wives or husbands. It really isn't as simple as just expecting your loved ones to wake up, so you really do need to be realistic in that regard. Tip number 7, get support. I can't stress enough how life-changing the awakening process can be. If you've been a Jehovah's Witness for any significant amount of time, it will have had an enormous impact on you psychologically. And this can lead to all sorts of psychological issues. And if it's at all possible for you or within your means, in some countries the state provides this, but it would be advisable for you to seek out a therapist and some kind of professional help to guide you through the issues that you're having to deal with. If for any reason you can't get a therapist, try and at least avail yourself of the resources that are available to you online. There's an excellent Facebook group called Ex-Jehovah's Witness Recovery Group 3 with over 5,000 members, where you can share your story and at least have some sense of community, some sense of people understanding what you're going through or what you've been through, and who can offer advice. That's just one example. There are other communities as well where people who have been through this situation themselves can give you some kind of support. And believe me, when you've been through such an unbelievable thing as being in a cult for years and years, you really do need as much support as you can get. Tip number 8, take your time and don't be rushed. If you're waking up from your indoctrination as a Jehovah's Witness, this itself is a huge accomplishment, and you still have potentially a lot of heartache ahead of you, but it's important that you go through all of this at your own pace and don't let anyone tell you, oh, well, you know, you need to believe this or you need to believe that, you need to join such and such a church. It's up to you to make those decisions yourself when you're ready for it and according to the conclusions that you arrive at, because everybody's different. Don't let anybody tell you what you should believe or at what stage you should be at in your awakening process. Tip number 9, don't expect all ex-JWs to be friend material. I know this sounds rather obvious and possibly quite contentious, but the simple truth is that just because someone else has been through your experience, they too have awakened from Jehovah's Witness indoctrination, that alone doesn't make them worthy of being a lifelong friend. It just simply doesn't work that way. I'm not saying that there aren't some wonderful people in the XJW community, because obviously there are. I've got many friends within the XJW community who have gone through the same experience as me, but sharing my experience shouldn't be the only thing that qualifies somebody as your friend. It should be a variety of other factors as well. So please be a little bit careful when it comes to choosing who your friends are from among the XJW community, because although there are a lot of wonderful people out there and you're going to really enjoy getting to know them, it just simply isn't true that if somebody is an XJW then automatically they must be your friend. It just doesn't work that way. And finally, tip number 10, expect to have doubts and flashbacks. Going through years and years of indoctrination of an organisation telling you who your friends should be, how you should behave, etc., etc., micromanaging every area of your life, to go from that to being free to do whatever you like, basically, to pursue your authentic self, that's no small thing, and it's perfectly understandable that you will have times when you doubt the decision you've made. You start asking yourself, am I really right to do this? Surely there must be some truth to what I was doing. Maybe the governing body are God's organisation on earth after all. Perhaps I've missed something. Perhaps I've been misled, etc., etc. And all of this is simply a product of the indoctrination that you went through, because you cannot be indoctrinated for decades and not have it have some kind of residue on your psyche. I go through the same thing from time to time, and frankly I regard it as a healthy thing to still have doubts. It's healthy to continue to question yourself, because the moment you get to a stage in life where you think you've got everything figured out, you think you've got all the answers, that's when you need to start worrying. So it's perfectly healthy to have doubts, but don't feel as though you're regressing or you're somehow not worthy, or don't feel any guilt basically if you do have flashbacks to when you were a witness or doubts about whether you're pursuing the right course. It's perfectly normal to have those doubts. Part of the reason why I mentioned research at the beginning of the video is so that when those doubts occur, you can fall back on what you've learned. You can think, hang on, what did I read in Crisis of Conscience? What have I learned about the Mexico-Malawi scandal, about the UN scandal? What have I learned about child abuse? And then when you connect all of those dots, sometimes you need to do it many, many times in your life. But when you refresh what you've learned, what has been proven to you by documented evidence about the organisation, that's what helps you to move past those momentary periods of doubt and of feeling as though somehow you might have made a mistake. It's perfectly normal. So those are my 10 tips for leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. I hope some or all of them are useful to you, and thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.